Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm giving you my 6-month review of the Rocket Appartamento, specifically the Nera version, which only has the cosmetic difference of the matte black side panels and the black guardrail for the cups. As always, timestamps and links to everything mentioned in this video will be in the description down below, and a quick reminder to join the giveaway that ends on December 31st, as well as to submit your home coffee station to be featured in a brand new series coming to the channel shortly. Okay, so let's get some of the boring stuff out of the way, or the stuff that I like to call the spec sheet, because a lot of this is stuff that you can find quickly by yourself online. The rocket measures 11 inches wide by 17 inches deep and is roughly 14 inches tall. This thing also comes in at nearly 50 pounds. The Rocket is a heat exchanger machine which can both brew and steam simultaneously using the popular E61 group head. Most of the machine is made of either stainless steel or chrome-plated brass. Something to note about the Nera version is that these matte black side panels do have a unique rubberized coat finish to them. With this machine, you get a 28-ounce drip tray capacity and a roughly 85-ounce water reservoir. On the machine itself, you've got the on-off switch, the pressure stat dial, a knob for steam, and a knob for hot water dispenser. Okay, so with the spec sheet stuff out of the way, let's continue. Starting off with the build quality, the Rocket Appartamento is an absolute tank. This machine comes in at nearly 50 pounds, so you want to make sure you've got a very sturdy counter, tabletop, or bar wherever you plan to put this machine. And the build itself does feel very premium and is made of premium parts, as it should, given its price tag of roughly $1,700. Everything seems to be built with metal, other than the handles of the portafilters and the plastic knobs for the steam and hot water dispenser. And over the 6 months of owning the machine, of course, there have been a few times where I've accidentally dropped the portafilter onto the drip tray or dinged it like that into the machine itself, but in general I clean up this machine and take care of it real nicely, so there are no scratches or dings that can be seen anywhere on the machine itself. Something that I particularly enjoy about the Rocket that sometimes might be overlooked: the magnetic drip tray. It has a very satisfying click, similar to that of an AirPods case. Although I will say that I do have one super small but annoying little gripe about the drip tray, and that's that I wish it was just a little bit, maybe a half inch or so longer. And that's because sometimes I find that when flushing water from the group head, that it hits just the very edge of the drip tray, sometimes causing it to spill outside of it. It's a tiny complaint, but it's very annoying. A trick that I found to mitigate this issue is to hold the portafilter at a slight angle underneath the group head while you're flushing with water, so that the water runs down the portafilter and towards the center of the drip tray. One other tiny gripe I have with this build quality is the placement, or I guess the design, of the hot water dispenser. I almost never use this thing, so I generally keep it out of the way. But for symmetry's sake, sometimes I wish it was designed so that it could sit directly above the opening in the drip tray, similar to the steam wand when not in use. However, with doing that, you can no longer operate the lever itself. It's not a big deal since I just leave it in a position that's kind of out of the way. It would just look a little bit nicer if it could sit right above the hole in the drip tray. Okay, so let's talk about what the experience is like to actually use a machine like this. First, out of the box, it is incredibly easy to set up. It's basically plug and play. On the back of the machine, you've got the power cord, so just make sure that's plugged in, make sure your water reservoir is filled, and you're pretty much good to go. I've posted a lot of workflow videos in the past, and will continue to do so every Wednesday as a part of my series called Workflow Wednesday, so be sure to go check out that series of videos if you're interested to see what a full start-to-finish workflow might look like on a machine like this. Pulling a shot of espresso is as simple as any other E61 group head machine. Just prep your portafilter, lock it in, and pull the shot. But there are a few things to point out. First, the space between your portafilter and the top of the drip tray measures about 5.5 inches if you're using the bottomless portafilter, and about 3.5 inches if you're using the spouted portafilters. So something you're going to want to keep in mind when you're pulling a shot of espresso is your serving vessel of choice. And for reference, this is what it looks like when I use the scale that I personally like to use, along with one of the not neutral Vero glasses in the cappuccino size. It leaves about 1.5 inches of space. Whereas with using the spouted portafilter, you can already see that the spouts of the portafilter itself do sink below the top surface of the cup. This shouldn't be an issue as long as you're only pulling espresso into it with nothing else in the cup yet. It is something to keep in mind that a relatively small 6-ounce glass is probably going to be about your max size that you want to go when pulling a shot with this machine. Unless of course you're using an espresso glass. For reference, one of these not neutral Vero glasses in the cappuccino size is roughly 3.5 inches tall. When operating a steam wand, always be careful because hot steam will of course burn you. And from pitchers ranging from 3 ounces all the way up to 14 ounces, I have had no issues maneuvering the steam wand to steam different sized pitchers of milk. Just make sure there are no obstructions to the left side of the machine so that you aren't blocking the steam wand. The steam power here is excellent, and while you can steam and brew at the same time, I personally find it a little bit difficult to time both. I'll either end up overshooting the shot or I'll end up overdoing the milk. So I tend to do it one at a time anyway, despite its ability to do both at the same time. But at least unlike a single boiler machine, you don't have to wait for the machine to heat up after pulling a shot to then steam a pitcher of milk. The guardrail for the cups also comes in the same black finish, and you can definitely keep enough cups on top of the machine to serve a small group of friends. One thing to take note of is that there are holes on top of the machine to allow the heat to escape, and while I don't know if these holes expose any part of the machine that could malfunction in contact with water, I would recommend only putting dry cups on top of your machine anyway. Another thing that I like to do is to keep a sheet of perforated shelf liner sitting on top of the machine, just to prevent the glass from scratching up against the machine. Not that it should, but I generally don't like the sound of the glass hitting the metal anyway. Another thing to quickly note is that you want to make sure you are using a nice and perforated shelf liner like I'm doing here, because you don't want to insulate the heat inside the machine. On top of the machine, I generally like to keep 2 latte-sized cups, 2 cappuccino-sized cups, and 3 espresso glasses, one with a spout so it's easy to pour into iced drinks. With regards to espresso, I've had no issues getting consistently good shots back to back. I'll also quickly point out that I'm still using the stock shower screen that came with the machine, although I know some people do like to upgrade to an IMS shower screen, but I did replace the gasket with a silicone one that came with the Pro Upgrade Kit when you order this machine from Seattle Coffee Gear. Just some other things to take note of is that I'm also using a 20-gram VST basket in my portafilter, and yes, this is the portafilter that comes with the machine. There are a lot of arguments about cooling flushes for heat exchanger machines like this, and I just know that somebody's going to say something about it in the comments, so here's my take on it. Yes, I do a little cooling flush at the start of making a drink. Usually 3 to 5 seconds, just until you don't hear the gurgling sounds of the water in the group head anymore. But another thing I want to point out is that if you can really perceive the difference in taste between a 3-second, 5-second, or 7-second flush, and if that perception and the taste difference does make a big impact for you, then I suggest you look for a machine with a PID. Another thing you could do is to install a thermostat into the group head so that you can monitor the temperature of the water, and that's something that I'm definitely thinking of doing sometime in the near future for this machine. So this machine is very easy to clean, and again, there are arguments here on the frequency of how much you should clean it using chemicals versus just water, but I will point out that the Rocket cleaning tabs that the machine came with does say that for optimal results, use fortnightly. So for the cleaning routine, I simply follow the instructions on these cleaning tablets. Using a blind basket, I'll put one of these cleaning tablets inside the portafilter, lock it into the group head, and then you're going to do 5 10-second flushes. Once that's done, I take the portafilter out, I give the group head a little scrub with one of the brushes it came with, I'll rinse off the portafilter, and then I'll do 5 10-second water back flushes. So far in the 6 months of owning this machine, I've been pretty much following what it says on these little cleaning tablets from Rocket, and I've had no issues so far, but you'll find arguments for people saying you should do it less frequently, and people saying you should do it more frequently. The drip tray itself is also easy enough to clean out. All I gotta do, pull it out of the machine, then you just clean off the lid of the drip tray, and the drip tray itself. One thing I will say is that it's a little bit annoying to kind of try and dry off the under part of the drip tray where you have all these little crevices where water can get into, but it's really not that big of a deal. Another thing that's worth pointing out is that they call this the no burn tip steam wand, and that definitely does not mean it will not burn you. I learned from watching Gail on Seattle Coffee Gear that this actually means that the milk won't stick to the steam wand if you don't immediately wipe and purge after steaming your milk. Of course, you're still going to be burned if you touch the tip of a hot steam wand. Despite the decent sized capacity of both the drip tray and the water reservoir, I found myself having to empty out the drip tray at least once, more often twice a week, and refilling the water reservoir at least once, also if not sometimes twice a week. But more than likely you're going to be emptying out the drip tray at least twice a week. I've talked a lot about this machine and the things I like and its features, but what are some of the small things that I don't like about this machine? Well, like I mentioned before, I do wish the drip tray was just a little bit longer. Placement of the hot water could have been better too, just from a visual standpoint. By far my biggest complaint is the water level indicator. So this little green light here that turns on when the machine itself is on will also alert you to when you don't have any more water in the tank. My biggest issue here is that it only alerts you to when there's no more water when your machine is being used, which means that it'll only alert you when you're midway through pulling a shot. I do wish it could have been designed in a way so that maybe it starts to alert you or turn on, or you maybe have a separate indicator for when your water levels are low, but still enough to pull maybe 1 to 2 more shots. But in the 6 months of owning this machine, it really only tells you when you're midway through a shot. And that's very annoying because then you have to go and grind new beans, prep a new puck, and pull a new shot, as well as fill up your water reservoir. The reservoir itself is not easy to frequently check on for water levels, unless you don't have anything placed on top of the machine. So for me, this means every few days, I'll pull the glasses off the machine, peel back the perforated shelf liner, and take a look inside the water reservoir. And for those wondering, I do think it's worth mentioning the fact that you can pull the water reservoir straight out of the machine. Like this. Okay. Okay, so just want to quickly add here that after filming my initial talking points, I did go back and ran a few extra tests. I emptied out the water tank completely, and I did realize that in fact it does alert you before using the machine that if your water tank is empty, it will start blinking to alert you that you have no water. However, realistically, you wouldn't really ever achieve an empty tank unless you get really lucky and just happen to finish your water as you pull your last shot. Some other things to take note of are the noise levels. Espresso machines in general are not quiet machines. And chances are if you're grinding your coffee fresh anyway, then you're already making a lot of noise in the morning. It's not like it's going to be a crazy wake your neighbors type of loud, but let's say if you had a roommate that lives behind the wall behind your espresso machine, then they might hear the machine. Then again, who wouldn't want to be woken up to freshly brewed good coffee? Alright, and finally the aesthetics. Love it or hate it, the Rocket machines are undoubtedly one of the most identifiable machines from this circular pattern they have on the side panels. I love it, and the matte black finish especially is what sold me. Yes, you can get cheaper machines with most of the same, if not more functionality than this machine, but most of those machines arguably look like a generic chrome box with an E61 group head attached to it. I will say that some of the Elite machines do come with a nice touch of wood, and the little red logo is a nice pop of color as well. An espresso machine is big, so you're not going to be able to hide this thing. So get a machine that you personally think looks good. I put a lot of thought and consideration into my setup because I do a lot of photography and of course now videos for YouTube. And in the world of espresso, when you see a machine like this, you can't help but immediately know that it's a Rocket. Okay, so for this portion of the review, after filming my initial talking points about the Rocket, I decided to run a poll on Instagram to find out what you guys might want to know about the Rocket. Also, I'm going to be standing over on this side of the frame just so that I can put up some of the questions here in text form. So some of the questions I got, I've chosen not to answer just because you can do a very quick and easy Google search and that'll pretty much get you the answer you're looking for. But with that out of the way, let's look at some of the questions that you guys asked me over on my Instagram. Do you have any upgrades you would like to add to the Rocket? I think at some point I do want to add a group head thermometer just so that I can take a look at the temperature of the water itself and kind of try and adjust it from there based on how long my cooling flushes might be. I think that would be something interesting to play around with in the near future. Will this be a good machine to start a pop-up coffee stand? Honestly, I don't have any commercial experience, but if you told me that I had to take this machine outside of my apartment and start selling coffee to people on the street, I don't see why I couldn't handle it. Although I will say it does have a relatively small water tank and it probably wouldn't be able to sustain a small pop-up stand depending on how busy you are. How many drinks can you make before the boiler starts to refill? So I'm not sure exactly how many drinks it would take before a boiler starts to refill. It would be very dependent on if you're rinsing your portafilter after pulling a shot and depending on how much water you're using generally throughout the whole process. But I will say that when the boiler does refill, you can hear it and it usually only takes between 5 and 10 seconds to refill, so I would never really consider this an issue. What's the type of water you use? I just use a simple Brita filter, although I do want to test out using some third wave water sometime. What is the biggest learning curve when using this machine? I wouldn't say there were any learning curves coming from the Gaggia. In fact, I would say that the Gaggia has a bigger learning curve just because it feels a little bit more finicky compared to an E61 machine like this. But if I had to pick something, it would probably be the steam power, just because coming from the low power of the Gaggia steam wand to the Rockets, it's quite a big jump. Is this machine suitable for beginners? Yes, 100%. Just check out any of my workflow videos, it's very easy to use. Is it good enough for light roasts? Reasoning being that it doesn't have a PID, making it a challenge. I exclusively drink light roast, so I don't have any issues dialing in my shots, and I can still get great tasting shots without the PID. Moving from lower scale coffee machines like a DeLonghi, will this make a big difference in taste? I would say that from something like a DeLonghi, yes, but mostly because I viewed a DeLonghi as more of an appliance rather than a prosumer machine like the Rocket Appartamento is. Is it worth as much as it is over the Gaggia Classic Pro? Yes, kind of. Depends on what your needs are. Check out my full comparison video between the two linked right here. I never know which side it's on. How long do you let it heat up before pulling a shot? About 20 to 30 minutes or so, sometimes longer depending on how busy I am that morning. What's the maximum number of milk drinks that you can make with the Rocket in a row? In a row, I have no idea. The most I've ever had to do is maybe 5-6 drinks at a time from either hosting a small group of friends or for filming a video, and had absolutely no issues doing that back to back. Although I will say it does take some time to get 5-6 drinks out since you only have a single group head. What's your dream machine after the Rocket? Probably a Linnea Mini or a GS3 from Spec Design. Okay, so my final thoughts. 6 months later, do I have any regrets or wish I had picked out a different machine? Nope. This machine has pretty much all the features I want. Great looks, great steam power, great consistency, and most importantly, great tasting coffee. Is this the best espresso machine at this price point? Also no. But does it have the best combination of features that I want and prioritize for this price point? Yes. So should you get this machine? Well, I would say that if you've been eyeing it for a while and you kind of already know a lot about it, then go ahead, pull the trigger. It's a great machine. Do you want some extra features like flow control, a PID, or maybe even a touchscreen display to monitor all sorts of statistics? Then this isn't the machine for you. Stay tuned to the channel for a video coming soon on how to pick your first espresso machine. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your coffee friends or people who might be considering a Rocket Appartamento or other machine. And I will see you in the next one.